Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode here at Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. And I get to work with a lot of different organizations across the spread of industries, and for a lot of them, they hear this word battlefield and they think to themselves, that's a little violent, isn't it? I mean, our folks aren't getting shot at. No one's trying to blow them up. Well, when I say battlefield, I'm talking about the battlefield of business that we all operate on in sales. Because believe it or not, if you're in sales, you're on the front line for your company. You're the one that's out there pushing the product, the service that you offer, trying to figure out what is the connection that I can make with the folks that I'm reaching out to so that they can see what I do as a solution for their challenges, for their problems, to help them reach their goals faster, better, more efficiently. That's the battlefield that I'm talking about. And thankfully, we're not being shot at, but there are a lot of threats on this battlefield. In sales, you are threatened with the after effects of a pandemic. You're threatened with supply chain challenges. You're probably in an industry that's affected with those, either through the product that you sell or through the personnel that it takes to deliver the product that you sell. That's part of your supply chain as well. Maybe that's a threat. You're threatened with the objections that you hear, the problems you can't solve every day, and of course, the deals that you don't win. Every single one of those is a round that's being fired at you on the battlefield of business. Now, my background on actual battlefields led me to understand that we don't have to dodge rounds for a living, okay? The troops that I was able to fight alongside in places like Fallujah, they didn't get better at dodging rounds. What they were able to do, what made them essentially bulletproof, was the ability to stop those rounds before they were ever fired. And how did they do that? They removed hope from their mission plan. So every single day for more than years, now it's been a couple of years, we've been here at Bulletproof Selling to help salespeople remove hope from how they sell across every aspect of their pipeline. And through that, we've been able to have folks on from Hall of Fame speakers, best-selling authors, sales leaders that are out there managing multinational teams, and of course, a lot of folks that are on the front line in the weeds every single day on that battlefield of business. But what does it take to remove hope from how we sell? Well, what I saw time and time again across hundreds of combat missions was the ability to build in a system to remove hope from that particular aspect of the mission plan. So that when we were out there in the field, kicking down doors, clearing rooms, making sure that we were doing our jobs and achieving our mission, it might look pretty seamless and it moves at a pretty fast pace. But what we don't realize, watching it in a movie or watching it on TV, is that there are hundreds of systems built into what these troops were doing. The best salespeople we found are doing the same things. And one of those areas that we really put a lot of emphasis on in sales is the activity, right? That's like looking at a machine gunner in the military and saying, well, that guy's putting a lot of rounds downrange. And yeah, they are. That M240 machine gun, it can put a lot of fire downrange. But what we don't do is send a machine gunner after one specific target. That's when we engage someone more along the lines of a sniper. Why? Because they can have a singular effect on a singular target in exactly the right way. So instead of focusing on the amount of sales activity that we are held to by our leadership, that's part of the equation, I'll grant you. But more importantly, the thing your leadership would rather see from you are closed deals. And that means positioning ourselves as that singular solution for that prospect's problem. So always happy to have another veteran on the show today, especially one that understands the power of being a singular solution, not just focusing on activity, but on the impact that activity can have. So always great to have on one of our Academy graduates, this guy, West Point graduate, former Army officer. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show today, Mr. Ryan Booth. Ryan, welcome, sir, to Bulletproof Selling.
Hey, how you doing, Sean?
It's a great day, sir. So for those of the folks out there that are listening that don't understand what I just meant when I said an Academy grad, what the heck is an Academy grad?
So everybody kind of watches the Army-Navy game every year, and we determine which one of the services are the best in the world based on football.
Why wouldn't you use football as the determiner of that?
Exactly. It's ground warfare at its finest. West Point was founded in 1802. It's the United States Military Academy, and that's where I had the opportunity to go to school after some enlisted time. So it's a great experience.
And that also means that you hold the rare title of being what we call a Mustang. What is a Mustang?
Yeah. So I was enlisted for 4 years. I served out my first stint, actually re-enlisted to stay eligible for West Point and wound up going that way without a break in service. So there's about 10% of the Corps, I believe, was the last numbers. 10% of the Corps cadets is prior service. So pretty interesting place to be when you walk into math classes that you haven't taken for a few years.
And what this does is, I'll give you kind of the sales analogy for all the listeners out there. What this means is that Ryan didn't just step into a leadership position. He had to actually work his way from the front lines to a leadership position. So not only did he understand what it took to succeed on the battlefield, but now he was trained in what it meant to really be a leader. And that's almost the same path that you took in sales. So walk us through a little bit about your background through sales, because I know you didn't drop in at the leadership level. So tell us a little bit about your history in this industry.
No, you're right. So I started off inside sales for a pump company, a rental company for the most part, and quickly kind of said, hey, I need to be outside to help these guys solve the problems that they're having, because I need to be in the field and take measurements, because most of the time I'm getting a phone call and people are too busy to do it. So I said, I want to go outside. They put me outside. They gave me New York City as a territory, and just kind of started racking up money there. And then that lasted for 12, almost 13 years. And I wound up switching out, and I found another company here, PSI Process, where I'm at, about 4.5 years ago. Started off, went right back to basic, territory management, sales management. And there's been some transition here with a lot of retirements. And slowly, in 4 years, I worked myself here into VP of sales for the company. So yeah, that's kind of, starting off from the bottom and working my way through the different iterations of leadership here.
And a lot of different sales models out there, and you're in one that I've come across in a couple of different industries, which is the model of making contact with the prospect, kind of learning a little bit about their needs, their challenges, what solutions they're after, and then sending out a quote for them to consider. But
Correct.
There's a lot of things that happen when you put a round downrange and we're not taking the time to aim. We don't understand what's our actual field of fire. We don't understand what's beyond our target. And, to move this over into the world of sales, a big challenge in just firing a quote out there is not understanding all of the things that could play into the success of that quote. So if I'm judging success, you heard my kind of intro, I'm a machine gunner. If I'm judging my success on how many rounds, how many belts of ammo I can feed through this weapon, instead of what I'm actually aiming at, I could be firing at empty jungle or at a brick wall, but it's not taking down a target. So talk to me a little bit about the challenges you're seeing in your industry with blasting out a quote, but not really considering what are all the things that need to go into to make sure this thing has the effect we want, which is to close a piece of business.
Right. And that's the struggle we found ourselves in. When I came into the management team here, it was, we need sales reps to be more involved specifically in this particular area, which is aftermarket sales. So we restructured the sales team and we went out and we did the basic, hey guys, go out and make contact with the owners of this equipment. Start trying to drive the maintenance and performance of the equipment. Start trying to find solutions that are out there and be their single point of contact for problems that they encounter and help them solve it, right? We did that, and all of a sudden we started getting a lot more activity, right? That worked. We put the sales reps in place. We put the machine gunners in the holes and said, lay down some suppressive fire. And that gave my engineered sales reps and my rental contractor sales reps the ability to maneuver behind them and do what they needed to do.
Nice.
The problem was we started getting a lot more inquiries coming in. And typical sales fashion is, hey, I got an inquiry. This one's a big job. Let's hurry to quote. Let's not do the steps that are necessary. And this is all new to our company too. It's new to the team. They've never been trained in this before. We're bringing technicians in and Mustanging them into sales, right?
Yeah. So
we're taking the techs, we're promoting them from within, generally speaking, some outside hires, but we're trying to teach them hey, go out and find the solution for this. And the one thing that happened was we started getting a lot of quote requests. And then they go out and I'm getting complaints from sales reps, from customers. Hey, this is taking me 3 or 4 weeks. I'm not getting my number. I need to know how much this is going to cost, right? So I go down and I talk to the sales reps. They're like, yeah, I talked to so-and-so and he said he's going to be busy for the next month. I don't know what I need to do here. So I started introducing the thing that all sales reps know and do religiously, even though they don't, qualifying the job, right? Qualifying that opportunity. And we just started on that. We're really in our infancy. And when I explained to them, you get one lead, or let's say you get 100 leads, 15 of those people are not going to return your phone call because it was a blank lead. It was somebody sitting in an estimating room saying, hey, I need a number. Of the 85 that are left, there's, maybe half of those guys get weeded out through the process of sales. And then we get to, 30 or 40 actual qualified projects that have worked their way through the, hey, what's your budget for the job? But how much were you expecting to spend? Because this is going to cost you X and you have half X available. Can we do something else? Are there multiple options we can take with different cost benefit analysis that can help hone this in, rather than sending a technician out to write up a quote that includes nuts, bolt, and gaskets when we're still not even talking about the major capital expense on this yet.
Right.
And being able to scope that in. So that's where we recognized our problem was we're getting too many quote requests and we're not doing enough qualifying.
And a lot of salespeople would hear that and they'd say, well, geez, that's a good problem to have, like having all these quote requests come in. But the challenge you mentioned is that if we tried to fulfill all of them, one of two things would happen. We would either lose our shirts because a lot of them aren't qualified for budget, or let's say we win them all. Now we're in a larger problem of not being able to deliver the quality of service that we want. Because, if every single one of your quotes were approved, I know your owners would be happy. But the problem is, well, now we got to deliver on it. So maybe we don't have the inventory that all of these people need at the same time that they need it. So there's a lot of situations, a lot of ins and outs, a lot of pieces of information and intelligence that have to be built into this to do it well. So I'm interested to hear then from your perspective, because obviously we talk all about removing hope here at Bulletproof Selling from the sales process. Where do you see your salespeople then over-reliant on hope in the quoting process? Where does hope really factor in the largest way that puts a ding in injury, affects mission readiness for you?
Yeah, so we're looking, because the amount of time it takes to do the quote, right? And the default is I can't do anything without a quote. Well, that's not true, right? Yeah. So we have hope by quoting, if you will, or, just firing rounds downrange. And it's, unfortunately, until we can invent a time machine that gives us more than 24 hours in a day, we're limited in that aspect. We have a few people that can go out and size up a job and write a proposal and get a quote out the door. But, just having the general price discussion, the general solution, hey, this is inbounds, this is out of bounds, this is your left flank, your right flank, you have this many rounds to fire, right? So, when I told people, I was like, hey, as a sales rep, it's okay to disqualify a job and not win it or not even approach it, because it's not something that we do. It's not something the customer's ready for, or maybe it's just there's too much work on the plate right now, which is a good problem to have as a business. But, we're not going to do everything for everybody. And having that discussion with people, having them understand that it's okay for us to disqualify a project because of any variety of aspects out there. But getting the quotes turned, ideally the estimators are working, they're 8 to 12 hours a day. And instead of getting 5 approved quotes a week, maybe they're working 8 hours a day and we're getting 30 approved quotes because we're doing the homework as a sales rep.
Yeah, and focusing on, of course, those lines of business that you can deliver on time, high quality, appropriate margins for your company, all the boxes that you have to check as well. So it is possible to create this win-win scenario for you and the customer, but it takes more than just firing rounds downrange and hoping a few of those hit the target. Which is why, the whole mentality of moving salespeople from a machine gunner over to a sniper or to a marksman really applies in your industry. And then something that is always, motivating for a salesperson, of course, is, we're in this game not just to serve customers, but to also build high quality lives for ourselves and our families. I know it's to the tune of like $10 or $20 million that are on the table just in your business, right? But I'm thinking, if I was to expand that to your entire industry, how many hundreds of millions of dollars are being lost every year because we're not taking the time to qualify on our quotes?
Well, you have a toilet in your house, right?
I hope I do. I've been using something different for years.
For your own thing, I hope you do. And that's the thing, is we work in the sewage and wastewater and drinking water industry. We don't have anybody in this world that doesn't touch what we do. So when you look at the scope, you see all the developments going in. There's a lot of sewer pipes and pump stations in the ground. There's a lot of need for clean drinking water. We're humans. That's 2 of the things we need the most. And that's our industry. That's our primary industry.
Yeah, and so it reaches out to so many people and so many other industries as well that could be of potential service to you that you could potentially serve as well. So let's build a sales system around this particular issue then, Ryan, because I think the idea of qualifying a quote, not just from our customer's perspective, but from our perspective, does it check all of our boxes, is going to be incredibly valuable. I always make this akin to a military term, which is building a target package, which I know is something that you had to learn to do as an officer. But the idea of here are all the things that you need to know about this target, not just to bring them in, but so that we can be at the right place and the right time with the right resources. So all of those things factor into that magical Venn diagram of let's not expend too many resources to get that target there. Let's have them come to us, which I think is always the ideal. You've already got people sending quotes to you. Now let's build a system to allow your team to filter through those and ask the right questions of the right people so that the quotes convert to the customers that you want to have. So when we're doing this, any new system, just like in the military, we're removing another piece of hope from our mission. So if we're trimming hope away here at Bulletproof Selling, use the acronym TRIM. Because in the military, we got nothing if we don't have acronyms. So here's another new acronym for the team. The T in TRIM is the trigger element. So if I'm building this out for your folks, and I want to know what is the trigger that pulls this off the shelf to say, let's actually build a target package for this quote. So when I do send it out, I'm making the decision. Is it this person? Am I answering all the questions I need to know that this is qualified? And am I really serving this customer with what we sell? Or am I just trying to push another, low margin thing for us? Where is the trigger in this? Is it when the quote comes in for your people? Is it earlier in the sales process? Trying to identify what is the ICP, the type of customers we want to take on this quarter? Where do I begin this?
Yeah, so I mean, our trigger is going to come on the aftermarket side from the owner having a problem. And, we identify, prioritize, propose, then quote and close, right? So once we identify that problem, we're in, that's the trigger for the qualification process. We either they've identified it by telling us, or we've identified it as something creeping, and we said something to the customer and said, hey, by the way, here's an issue you're going to have. We need to get this addressed.
So it sounds like it could be either an inbound or an outbound process for you. So if it's inbound, then does that look like the owner sending you a request for a quote?
Yeah, it would be an owner either notifying us, hey, I need a technician. I need somebody to look at this problem I'm having. We don't have a differentiator between inbound and outbound. We have a sales team that does both. Each person does both. Yeah.
Gotcha. So they're not segmented by role, but they're taking inbound and outbound, same individuals. Correct. Okay. So that's the inbound situation. But talk to me about outbound, because I know you and I have talked a lot in our conversations about making sure that we're targeting the right people. What does an outbound process look like for a trigger on us? How do we identify that they have a need, even if they haven't expressed it?
Well, one of the ways is there's a lot of people moving around the industry, and we see the trucks in and out. If there's a problem, they can use like a big Vector truck. Those are the big trucks that say municipal waste on the back, and they have the hoses. Sometimes a nice outbound lead is following one of those things around and seeing where it's going, because they're going somewhere to handle something. It's poaching, but hey, it is what it is. The other one is, the mechanics went out for a service call because we have service contracts or inspection programs. We take a look at that and we're like, hey, I'm starting to notice this on your thing. Like you're getting a lot more run hours on one pump. I'm going to make an outbound call on that instead of waiting for the problem. I'm going to go approach a customer and say, pump one has double the hours of pump two. What's going on? Have you noticed a problem? And starting to bring those issues to the customer.
And that's really being of service to them too. Being able to say, we notice you're have exceptional amount of runtime on this piece of equipment. Just to let you know, that means that the life cycle hours of this thing are going to be reduced because you're doubling its capacity essentially. And we want to make sure we're serving you by letting you know this and also giving you a choice of options for what you can do to make sure that you don't have a catastrophic failure that prevents you from being able to get your job done. Awesome. I love that.
Exactly. It's reconnaissance.
Okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. It's good reconnaissance, which is your specialty. So there you go. So we've got the trigger element now. The R in trim is making this repeatable. So like on the battlefield, if I'm sending a reconnaissance team in, they're going to follow a specific series of steps that are going to have to pivot because the environment they're going into is going to change on them. But they know here's the battle plan. So what's the battle plan for us? If we've got that trigger done, we know that there's a need either through inbound or outbound notification on that customer or that potential customer. what are the 4 or 5, big steps that I can follow to make sure this person is qualified, that I'm answering the questions I need answered, and that when I do send this quote out, it's of service to the customer, because it's, it's not just, hey, let's blast this thing out and hope they accept it. What are those steps I need to follow as a salesperson?
So I think number one is, does the customer understand the problem that they're having? Versus the symptoms, right? If you go to a doctor's office and you say, hey, I need a prescription for this particular medicine because I'm having headaches, right? And that's not what's causing your headaches. It's not going to help you, So understanding that they're reporting symptoms to you, and go out, make sure that they understand the problem, not the perceived solution.
Gotcha. All right. Good. Step one. All right.
Yeah. And then while you're there, introducing the question or the conversation of budget, timeline, making sure it's something we can do, that, we're in spec, we're in scope, and trying to push that conversation along and find out where we don't match.
That's a great question, actually. Is there a spot we don't match? And to ask that question, one of the best sales questions I've ever been trained to ask are, what are the reasons somebody shouldn't buy from me?
Yeah. And that's, that's important, because we all love our company and we're all the best at what we do. Just ask anybody,
right?
They'll tell you.
Right.
Yeah. So, but why wouldn't you want to work
that? Do we have the capability? Is it the type of business that we want to be in? There's a lot of things we can do, but we know that 80% of our sweet spot is right here.
And the other thing too on that is, just because, I'm sorry, go ahead. But just because we're not necessarily the solution provider on that, one example I use is, I had a guy call me one day and he's like, hey, I need a pump that can pump dry soil. And I'm like, oh, you don't need a pump, you need a shovel. So yeah, but it's a lot. Okay, so you need an excavator. I happen to know a guy that sells those. I can bring them to you. I can introduce you. That doesn't mean you're not the solution guy, right?
Right.
Just because you're not necessarily making the transaction. Ultimately, the goal is to get more transactions, but you can help them with their solution, and they're going to remember that and call you later. I mean, like, hey, thanks for checking me on that. I wasn't thinking,
Yeah, I love that. Love it. So we've got, does the customer understand there's a problem? Do they know that the symptoms they're experiencing are actually linked to the problem that you can solve? Because there's a lot of symptoms out there, and the customer may not even realize, like, that's a secondary effect of this thing that Ryan's company can help me solve. So that's a beautiful thing, to help them link the symptoms to the problem. And then you mentioned, getting budget, timeline. Do we have the capability to solve it? Do we want to be the ones to solve that? So what's a good third or fourth step in this process?
I would say urgency. Like, what is the timeline you're looking at here for the repair? What is the, how quick does this need to happen? Because that changes our scope a little bit. We have a lot of temporary solutions we can put in place while the permanent solution is coming. Changes the potential dollar value of the job too. If it's something, hey, I need this done yesterday. Sorry, I didn't call you yesterday. There's a price for that, right? And what's the upstream and downstream effect of what we're getting ready to propose? If they say, I need a bigger pump. Okay, can your treatment plant handle the additional flow? Or do we need to do something to modify the controls too? We can't just always pop and drop.
I love that. So the upstream and downstream effects of the purchase that you're considering with the customer. So to let them know, they bring on this piece of equipment, here are the things they need to be concerned about. And that's another great question, especially if you're dealing with a customer that's likely getting alternate quotes. If you're blessed enough to be in an industry where you are the only one to supply what you do, hey, great. But chances are, if it's a large enough purchase, that customer is going to get at least a comparison quote or two. And you can really serve them by saying, when you get that quote from other people, make sure you're asking these 3 questions.
And
of
that's
course,
the key.
You can find those 3 questions.
Yeah, exactly. Getting our ideas onto the table for everybody to be considered. We have one particular item that we sell that we program and sell. It's a control package. And I had one of my best customers for my entire career in sales. He spanned 2 companies with me, calls me up and says, hey man, I've done all the homework for you. Here's a list of contacts and signals we need to get. Walk in, he's our president now, but he was our controls leader. He takes a look at it and he's like, yeah, we can do this for about $80,000. But he could save a lot and get a lot more by doing it by cooking with our recipe, right? The cake is always better when mom makes it. So we took that contact list. I said, okay, well, I'm going to do up a proposal on this for about 80 grand. And then I'm going to talk to them about the others and just tell them, like, how much magnitude are we talking? I could save them 2/3 of the cost of this project. So I went out and I said, if you need a formal quote, here it is. It's $80,000. And we were within $50. I said, but if you cook with our recipe, you get more of this, you do this, you do this. And the other thing you didn't consider is this, right? Like I said, upstream and downstream ripple effects. You're going to need to buy a home base for this particular system. We don't need that with this one. And now we're transitioning everything in that plant and the surrounding municipalities to that system. It was more of an enterprise sale than it was a pump equipment sale, believe it or not. So,
yeah, to frame what you do as a holistic solution rather than just a singular effect on a singular target. So now I'm not just making one shot against one target. I'm making one shot that's going to have a massive downstream effect on mission success for my customers. That's a great way to go. So if we've got trigger element, making this repeatable, the ion trim is something we had to learn how to do in the military to stay up to date with a changing environment. So the I stands for improvement. How am I going to look at this system to ask, where can it be improved? Am I looking at downstream effects for my customers? Am I looking at return rate? What are the things that I can do to actually improve this system over time?
So that's one of the things is I want to look at the conversion rate. Like, it's okay for the number of quotes to drop if the conversion rate goes up of quotes, not of proposals, but of quotes. We understand the revenue that we can hold, that we can service effectively. But what we need to start seeing is a higher conversion rate, more effective qualification process, better proposals, weeding those out before we start sending out our field service estimators to go out and start making these proposals or making these quotes, turning the proposal into a quote.
I like that. So looking at how many folks you're actually weeding out of your quoting process. So we could have issued 80 quotes, Ryan, but we really only ended up issuing 40. And the qualifiers for those 40 quotes were this line of business. I'm curious then, because with the M and trim is measurement, and I know that conversion rate on quotes is going to be probably a major factor in that. But if I want to, like, after action my quoting process, what are the things that I'm probably going to look at to say, how do I take this as a system and alter it or adjust it to make sure I'm better serving the people that I want to serve? Is it maybe looking at the inventory that we have and seeing, here are the items that are highest margin for us that have the highest impact? Am I moving more of those? How am I going to after action this process?
So for us, like I said, we're kind of new to the organized sales approach. So I realized we had after speaking with you and trying to figure out how do we measure this, I realized we didn't have a measurement tool in place. So I just closed on a piece of software with a guy who is giving us that ability to measure it. And, the first thought is, okay, what's our conversion rate on quotes? If our conversion rate is too low, then that means we have to do a better job qualifying, right? If our conversion rate is too high, that means I need more field service estimators. So being able to understand that and meet the need, because if we're closing 90% of the quotes, which is what every sales rep thinks they can do, but they really don't, right? If we're converting 90% of those, then I've got room for another field service estimator, and I can take on another 50 or 60% more quotes, depending on how good that person is, right?
Yeah.
And then coaching that qualification phase and getting to that measurable, saying, hey, we want to convert 50% of these is the goal. Just start off with 50%. Every time you flip a coin, it's going to come up heads, right? So we want to get to that number. We want to start seeing what's out there, because right now we get a good feeling about it, but we don't really measure it. And that's one of the things we're changing in here, is the measurement phase.
I like that. So we're changing the questions that we're asking. That's one way to improve. So if I look at, here are the list of questions that kind of make up my target package on each of these prospects. I've run this system for a quarter, let's say. Take a look at the questions again and ask, are we seeing any questions come up that we're not addressing, but that ultimately we could be addressing to help these things move through faster or better qualify the prospects before we put a quote out, before we invest the time in that? And then you also mentioned are you actually adjusting your quote conversion number? That's a great thing to look at for improvement as well. So if I was getting a 20% conversion before, and I've adjusted my questions, I've actually built a process around this instead of winging it, instead of just, firing rounds downrange and hoping something hits a target. Maybe I can move from 20% as a goal to 50% because now I'm targeting a different group of people in a better way, a more solutions-oriented way. So, man, that covers it all. You've got the trigger, making it repeatable, improvable, and then measuring on quote conversion and asking, hey, are we really making an impact on these customers long term? Something you and I talked about that I think would be a great measurement is, am I increasing the lifetime value of my customer by running a quoting process this way? So that as they enter my world as a customer, they see not just that we're there to sell to them, but we're there to serve because of the way that we're introducing education, asking great questions, and letting them know the downstream effects of their purchases. Lifetime, I think, value is something we should absolutely measure too.
Yeah.
That's awesome, sir. Well, with that sales system in place, I know a lot of salespeople listening are going to want to start using it because a lot of us are based on, hey, if we're getting these quotes out there, I want to convert more of them. Let's start putting this into practice. So for the folks interested in learning more about you, your company, PSI, where can they go to find more, to connect with you, to just get deeper into your world?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm at Ryan Booth. There's an actor out there named Ryan Booth, but I think he's more on Facebook and Instagram than he is on LinkedIn. But I'm on LinkedIn. The company's PSIProcess.com. Fairly unique. We're employee owned, 100% employee owned, so we don't have owners breathing down our neck, and I don't have to answer to Wall Street. It's a great team. Everybody's there. If you go to PSIProcess.com, you can see little vignettes of our employee ownership, little vignettes of what we do. But it's a web page, and it doesn't really speak to actually the quality of what we have here and the team that we have. So
that's amazing, sir. And as you go and do that, if you're following us as well on Bulletproof Selling YouTube channel, make sure you're hitting subscribe. If you're on podcast right now, you're at the gym, you're running, you're maybe at the shooting range, putting rounds downrange yourself. However you're listening to your education, go ahead and hit subscribe on that. Leave a review and let salespeople know that hope does not have to be part of their sales process. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for giving back to the sales community today by walking through a great process for better quote conversion. And we've had a couple of people, kind of chime in here. I'll just put one of those comments on stage right now, which is, let's get bulletproof. That's exactly what I was going to say to you, sir. As we get out there, let's sell more, let's serve more. And Ryan, let's make selling bulletproof. Have a great day, sir. And thanks again for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.